Hello everyone and welcome to the Kootneeti's YouTube channel. I am Niranjan Marjani. Today we are going to talk about Libya. The first round of presidential elections is going to be held in Libya on December 24. The democratic process is starting after a decade of civil war since Muammar al-Gaddafi was ousted. Is Libya ready for this political transition, or will there be more political uncertainty in the coming days? To tell us more about that, we have with us Ms Zahra Langhi from Libya. She is a member of the Libyan Political Dialogue Forum and head of Libyan Women's Platform for Peace. Ms Zahra Langhi, welcome to the Kootneeti.
Thank you. Happy to join you today.
So before I come to the elections, for the benefit of our viewers, if you could briefly describe how the situation has been in Libya for the past 10 years and how the events unfolded since Muammar al-Gaddafi was ousted. If you could tell us about that.
Well, as we all know, on the 17th, or basically the way we like to state it, with her story, it's all started on the 15th of February when women in Benghazi rose up and were calling Libyans to rise up against Gaddafi. So there was tension all around the region, and there were certainly in Libya grievances, political, economic grievances, and throughout Libya there were uprisings calling for the fall of the regime. As we know, the uprising in Libya was militarized, and that necessitated the intervention by the NATO. However, as Obama himself has confessed before leaving office, the failure of the strategy of the US and the international community is that there was no a plan, a follow-up plan of the day after the fall of the regime. On September 2011, there was a UN mission established for Libya. And according to this mission was only a political a mission, a UN support mission that basically focuses on the political track. So the idea is to have elections. There was no, and this is how the tragedy unfolded. There was no thinking of how to deal with the legacy, the heavy legacy that Gaddafi left behind. Gaddafi regime was more of a rogue state, or a stateless society ruled by iron fist. So the whole legacy of statelessness, of economic grievances, the militarization of the uprising, how to deal with the flow of weapons in the country, all of this the UN failed to address. And so we had the 2012 elections. All the euphoria of the uprising and the elections itself started to fade away in late 2012, with the rise of violent extremism, demolishing Sufi tombs, the rise of militias, the introduction of the political isolation law, And then with the phase of the groups, some of these militias were affiliated with the Qaeda, and then the rise of the ISIS in Libya, especially in Derna, in Sirte, and then with and 2013 and 14. We had a lot of assassinations targeting basically civil society activists, including a leading woman like Salwa Boughagis, like Farih al-Barkawi. Salwa Boughagis was the deputy head of the National Commission for National Dialogue. Farih al-Barkawi was a woman, a female member of the Congress then. So the attack was basically on whoever was calling for a peaceful transfer of power, for a civil state, for a more inclusive and just Libya. There was from the beginning a failure to establish a transitional justice period, a transitional justice process. So that has paved the way for the rise of Khalifa Haftar, who became the head of the Libyan Arab forces, or the Libyan National Army. And that started another phase of militarization. Another phase of political division, especially with the 2014 elections and the Islamists not accepting the results of the elections, and the launching of Fajr Libya operation. And so it became Karama versus Fajr Libya. And then we started the political process. And the problem is that mostly for years, a string of UN special envoys to Libya have basically tried to broker a national unity government that combines the two opposing administrations, and in cooperating the various political networks, tribes, militias that divided the country. However, this elusive political solution to the country's various conflicts culminated in a top-down, centralized arrangement that did not stabilize the country. However, this top-down approach of the UN that focused on establishing a toothless, centralized government in Tripoli that has no authority in the rest of the country, this has played to Libya's weaknesses and rather than its strengths, and has repeatedly failed. It has exacerbated the sensitivities and the conflicts that were there. And we've seen with the Sarraj-Skhirat agreement and the LPA failed, the LPA expired, and we couldn't go, there was a problem in the transfer of power. So ever since that, the problem became that we have what we call forces of the status quo. They basically have captured the state. We have, after the fall of Gaddafi, the rise of oligarchs, the rule of minority that have captured the state and have been thriving on the political division, on the conflict in the country, so that they can rob Libya's Libyan state of its wealth. So that's why with over 3 years after the expiry date of the Libyan political agreement, the UN appointed government of Sarraj, back then was called the GNA, we were supposed to have elections. And the two bodies, the HOR, the House of Representatives, and in Tobruk, in the east of the country, and the High State Council in Tripoli, were supposedly negotiating a legal framework for the elections. However, they agreed to disagree so they can maintain the status quo. With that, this civil war that started in 2014 after the Islamists in the West refused to recognize the results of the elections, and with Khalifa Haftar launching his military operation not only against ISIS or Qaeda affiliated militias, but with a wide spectrum of militias, the tensions have grown ever since, and this civil war became internationalized. Ever since 2018, and especially with the war that Khalifa Haftar in 2019 launched against Tripoli, the war against Tripoli. Ever since that, we have now 20,000 mercenaries and foreign fighters. We have 10 foreign military bases in the country. And the political division continued until we had this, the agreement on silencing the gun, between what we call the Joint Military Commission, the 5+5. And then we had the political track. So all of this came with Ghassan Salama, the former special envoy of the UN to Libya, when he established the Berlin process. So the Berlin process started as an international effort, a whole process that that recognized that we need to have a comprehensive approach to Libya, not only political, because the Khairat agreement back in 2015 was only focused on the political aspect. However, a Berlin process addressed all other issues. Yet there were no clear measures. So yes, they started with a military track, a political track, the Libyan Political Dialogue Forum, which I am a member of, and an economic track. So the military track has been the successful so far. And whenever there is a stalemate, a political stalemate, it is the military track that has been making these advances. However, at the moment, we were supposed to deal, after silencing the guns, with unifying the army, and we have a clear time frame for the withdrawal of the mercenaries and foreign fighters and foreign fighters, and all foreign military existence in Libya. However, we've seen that certain countries like Turkey have been blocking this in Berlin too, and in Paris, saying that their existence in Libya is basically came with an agreement with the former government of Sarraj, the GNA. However, we know that this bilateral agreement was never ratified by the parliament. And according to the roadmap that the Libyan Political Dialogue Forum has established back in Tunisia last year in 2020, we were supposed to unify the state institutions, restructure the presidential council, select and appoint a presidential council and a cabinet, and not to review in this preparatory period or phase any agreements, however, not to sign new one as well. The problem is, and we were supposed to start preparing for the national elections, i.e. the presidential and the parliamentary elections. We were supposed to, as a Libyan Political Dialogue Forum, agree on a constitutional base for this, for the coming elections. However, with the structure, ironically, with the structure of the LPDF that was composed of 13 members from the HOR, the parliament, and 13 members from the High State Council, who have repeatedly aborted any effort to agree on the legal framework for the elections, because they are basically the forces of the status quo, and they want the to maintain the status quo. But we know that the status quo is unsustainable and would further stabilize the country. So unfortunately, the forces, the proxies of the newly elected government that was supposed to oversee the GNU, the Government of National Unity, that was supposed to oversee the elections and be the grantor institution for the elections. This is the whole idea why we have restructured and appointed another government, is basically that it was supposed to be a state, a government that is not part of the conflict, that will guide us and move forward to the election. But unfortunately, it became a part of the conflict, and it has become the new status quo. And it is using all the state funds now to obstruct the elections, and lately to hijack the elections by insisting that the prime minister should run in contravention to the roadmap and to the pledges that he made to the Libyan Political Dialogue Forum.
But then how do you see the democratic process or a democracy gaining foothold in Libya? Like you said, there is no single constitutional framework as yet. So how would be the situation in Libya after these elections? In absence of that,
it's not clear that we would have these elections at the moment. I have been a very strong advocate for these elections. However, now with the latest tragic developments that took place 2 days ago, the attack on the polling stations, the insistence on Saif al-Gaddafi running, though he is wanted by the ICC for war crimes that he is indicted with the insistence that the current prime minister run for the elections that are in 3 weeks, in contrary to the law endorsed by the by the HOR is a problem. So some would say that the law for the electoral law is problematic. Yes, indeed, it's problematic, but we have been, these two bodies, the High State Council, I repeat, and the House of Representatives for the last 3 years have been negotiating with 3 special envoys, okay? And they agreed not to agree because they want to maintain the status quo. I was myself a member of the legal committee at the Libyan Political Dialogue Forum, entrusted to draft the constitutional framework. We had 28 formal sessions, 40 sessions for the drafters. And then we had another 4 sub-committees to look into the constitutional framework, but the proxies of this government, of other forces of the status quo, insisted in aborting the track of the constitutional framework. So it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be a reason to derail the elections, because Libya since 2011 has been ruled by the constitutional declaration. We had 11 amendments to the constitutional declarations. The last 4 or 5, since the 7th amendment, has been contested by either party. So it's either that you change that altogether, and one of the proposal that I personally pursued is basically to reinstate the Constitution of 1951. That is the only constitution that Libya knew throughout its history and had throughout his history, and was frozen with Gaddafi's coup in the 31st of August 1969. And Gaddafi, as we know, had no constitution. He has his own green book. So in 2011, the National Transitional Council had this constitutional declaration, and then we had the 3 elections. We had the parliamentary elections, and then the constitutional assembly elections, and the track of the constitutional assembly became polarized. And that's why the calls for the referendum, the referendum was halted, because it would further polarize the country. So there are root causes that need to be addressed, that has never been addressed, whether in political agreements, in political dialogues, or in this draft of the constitution, and nor in any of the drafts for the constitutional framework. So my proposal has been, and would always be, that we need to instate the Constitution of 1951. We need an Archimedean point where we can start, and it is before any civil war has broke between Libyans. So that constitution was federal. It's also you had a constitutional monarchy. Not necessarily we could have a constitutional monarchy. The mandate of the monarch, according to the constitution, could be delegated to the prime minister, because Libya at the moment, with all the challenges of militarization with the militias, the mercenaries, the foreign fighters, the foreign military bases, migration Libya needs a strong executive body that is not obstructed or manipulated or blackmailed by the parliament as it is today. It needs a very strong executive authority. And frankly, this has been the conflict in Libya. Libya has been through, for the last decade, has a system of governance more like Lebanon. Warlords are represented in the parliament. The governor of the central bank is the sovereign in Libya. And it's all about protecting the governor of the central bank. And it's all about this governor supporting the militias on the ground. So this is where it starts and where it ends and where it needs to be addressed. Libyans need to elect select, choose whoever they want to represent them in the executive authority through elections. We should not be defrauding Libyans from the right to choose who they want to represent them. However, I would say that, but that does not mean that we need to have a proper vetting process. And this has been the problem even with the process of the LPDF, with the Libyan Political Dialogue Forum, which was rigged. And that's why the outcome was flawed. There is no clear criteria or conditions for those who run. And unfortunately, the influence of money, political money, has been corrupting the process. And we have, it has corrupted the UN-led peace process. And actually, the corruption has been normalized in the UN-led peace process. And the same, we see it now, is taking place with the elections. That was supposed to be guided and overseen by this government that was selected by the Libyan Dialogue Forum. But now we see that there is an outreach, a breach of the roadmap by this government itself in using the state funds to fund the presidential campaign of the Prime Minister.
What is the status of women's participation in Libya's democratic process, and what changes would you like to see in the society in general and in political structure of Libya with respect to women?
Well, as I started off at the beginning, women have been have been playing a significant role in this transition, starting from day one, the uprising. It was the women who have started this uprising. But as I have been calling it always, there is more of a gender paradox in Libya's transition. On the one hand, a Libyan woman at the forefront of the uprising, of those calling for a change, for elections, for transitional justice, for national reconciliation, for the mediation efforts. On the other hand, there is political violence unprecedented political violence against Libyan women. When you look at the number of women who have been assassinated for their political activism, for being vocal, the way that they were assassinated, it's horrendous. Salwa Bugakis was assassinated like no other woman. She was actually assassinated on the day of the last parliamentary elections. On that day, she posted her photos calling Libyans to come out and cast their vote, encouraging them to participate in the electoral process. 4 gunmen rushed into her house, killed her, abducted her husband. It has never been done to any other male political activist. Following that, just in 2 weeks, another woman, female parliamentarian, Farih al-Barkawi, who resigned from the National Congress then because she was calling for the peaceful transfer of power and the elections, was assassinated in daylight in Derna. Siham Sergiwa, who came out on TV in Benghazi and called, she was a parliamentarian, and she called for this, for ending the war on Benghazi by Khalifa Haftar. A group of armed men broke into her house, grabbed her in front of her kids, husband, neighbors, and up to this moment, we don't know anything about her. Other activists in Tripoli were assassinated, who were only advocating for a civil state and were against a violent extremism like Intisar al-Hasairi. Last year, when we started the Libyan Political Dialogue Forum, just started its first session. It was the second day. We heard about the gunning down of Hanan al-Barasi, a vocal woman on Facebook who was always criticizing the military and militias affiliated with the military in the East. And women still continue to play that role and are very vocal about their support for ending this viral conflict, about giving the Libyans their right to elect their authorities. So they stand very vocal against all who want to defraud Libyans of the right to choose their representatives, either in the parliament or in the executive authorities.
Ms Zahra Langhi, thank you for your time and for speaking to the Kootneeti. We hope you found this interview. Yeah, thank you. It's been great to talk to you. We hope you found this interview informative and insightful. You can tell us what you think in the comment section below, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also follow us on various social media websites, the details of which are on your screen. Thanks for watching.